Hey guys, welcome back to another Cards and Comics, and today I've got a small mail update, and I want to announce I've created a new collection. Um, you think you would want to close some collections before you start new ones, but that's not how I roll. I just start new ones and just keep piling on because, but I'm actually really passionate about this collection, and it's just driven by, my love of the character. So it's a comic book collection. Obviously, a lot of my videos have been recently about Sandman and Death, and I decided to try to collect every cover that Death appears on. And I just found some new ones that I didn't know existed, which is great. But I'm also going to add things such as previews magazines, other magazines. I'm trying to get every time Death appears as on the cover of any sort of periodical, comic book, whatever. So that's going to be the fun part of the collection. Now, I'm also going to collect anything that Death appears in that's relevant or is important to the character or just has some unique significance. So I have some new books in that collection today. That's why I wanted to kind of announce that, hey, I'm going to officially have that as a collection, and you'll see a lot more Death-related books seen in the future. But the two new books I found, when they show up, I'll show them to you. I didn't know they existed, and they're awesome. And I'm like, great, I learned something by just doing more and more research. And so those two new books I'm just super excited about. So I'll start with cards today. Here is a card from my Griffey collection that I'm building. It's 1998 Fleer Power Plus. These are foil cards, and you can see they're super, super shiny and refractory. Again, 98 Fleer Ultra, or just Fleer Ultra at this time period, was just a super cool set. I mean, they had the best inserts probably in the game around this time period, until really like Skybox and Metal came around. Fleer Ultra had some of the cooler inserts. So Fleer Ultra Power Plus Griffey. Next up is an 80s card, and so this is a 83 Donruss, or sorry, 82 Donruss PSA 9 George Brett. And I've started, again, in my Hall of Fame collection, one of my big voids is, one of the ones that's really sad is the 50s, because I don't feel like I have enough 50s cards. Obviously, they're harder to find, they're more expensive, so it makes sense, but I do wish I had more 50s cards like Maze and Aaron, Mantle, those kind of things. But another area where I really am devoid is 80s, right? I have a lot of 80s cards, but not a lot of 80s like Hall of Famers who were like George Brett, like top tier Hall of Famers, who were big in the 80s. And so I'm kind of addressing that. So here is 82 Donruss George Brett 9. Next up is a guy whose cards have gotten a lot hotter recently, and this is 79 Topps Tom Seaver. And Seaver cards are really hot right now. I just think it's people are starting to catch on to war, and Seaver has, I think, one of the highest wars of modern players who retired. Seaver just was one of those pitchers who that the stats loved, and so he just has gotten a lot of love from the stat community as far as being underrated. And the story goes like this, is that, Nolan Ryan is one of the most overrated pitchers based on stats, and Tom Seaver is one of the most underrated. I can see that argument, but if you watch baseball, in the 90s, when Nolan was towards the end of his career, it was just fun. The guy could pitch a no-hitter. You felt like every game he went out there, and I just felt like that has some value, even if it's not statistical, right? Where the guy is just so dominant that you just want to watch him because he's so cool. And that was what it was like with Nolan. And I don't think Tom Seaver had that same sort of feel when he pitched every time, but could be wrong. But that's the mantra you're hearing now is Nolan Ryan's overrated and Tom Seaver's underrated, and so his cards should be hotter. And I think you're seeing kind of some price corrections. You're seeing Seaver's cards definitely go up. Next up is the start of my comic book collection, the new one I just told you about. So this is a Sandman book, but it's not a Sandman book. I'll I will make this zoom out a little bit so we can see the full book. And there we wait. There we go. All right, so here we go. So this is Hulk 418, and if you listen to my Sandman video or my Death video on Speculating on Death, this is one of the books that I talked about, so I went out and bought it. These are not very expensive, but the cool thing about I got this collection from the same dealer was he had the Ashcan. So if you look on the back, you see the Ashcan version of this book, which is, again, really, really cool. Again, one of my lamentations about this book is, I love that word, that it doesn't have like death on the cover, and I wish like you could have seen just maybe her hair, but she's pictured in this book in a few panels talking to some of the characters, and so it's obviously death. It's not like a look-alike, or it's death. And so she's in a Marvel book. It's like the first time she ever appears in a Marvel book. And if they could have found a way to at least get her hair on the cover, it would have been awesome. But it's the regular issue plus the cool Ashcan. So this is really fun. Next up is a book that I kind of mentioned in passing as a book that I didn't put into my spec book list because it's a cover appearance of Death, so it's in my collection, but it's just not one I really love the artwork for, just in general. It's Musings 1 from Calliope Comics, and so it's kind of like all these kind of cool creators like Harlan Ellison and Joe Thompson, and then some of the artists that worked on the book, talking about the characters. It's just this kind of a retrospective on Sandman, and it came out in '93. And it's a good. I think some people would say this is a good cover. I just feel like it's a little bit of a little abstract for me in terms of just like like for example, Death looks like a little midget girl on there, so it's just not what I like as far as like art in terms of like I think it's a great Death cover, but it's a cover and it's in the collection. But some people really like this one, I know. So some folks actually asked me about it. Next up is another Death-related book. This is from the Evil Empire. I got it from Mile High Comics, which is Mile High's great because they carry everything, so you can find a lot of this stuff. So this is Lucifer 25. Now I did have this in my spec video, and the reason why is because it's I think it's such a great cover. I really said in that video too, I love this cover because she's like in the middle of the cover, so the cover is about her. It's not like she's in the like left or tiny photo or covered in like in a lot of Sandman books she's covered in like other symbolism. It's like her, and she's the focus. It's a great image of her, and it's just kind of awesome that in this Lucifer book she's there. And so her the two books I'm talking about that I'll show you when they show up, she is not the focus on those covers, and therefore they're not as cool as this one is. So I really think this is one of the better covers to really spec on. So even though I found these two new books, I wouldn't have put them in the list anyway, or I may have added them on as a maybe a like with Musings and some other books as a FYI. Here are some other books you can look at, but they're good, but they're very cool, and they have actually really good art, but she's not the focus. So I really want to get books in terms of speculation where she is in the middle, or at least the focus of the cover. So and the last up is a book that has gotten a lot of press and a lot of people talking about, and it's Recount #1. And for people who don't know about this book, it's basically a story about an election, just like we had, where a recount was done, and in the book, the people who voted for the person who won, but found out through the recount that they had either cheated or, I guess I got to read the book in more detail. But from what I understand, this they kind of tracked down everyone through social media who voted for this person, for the person who won, and start killing them all and basically taking retribution on these people. And I think that is an interesting story. I think it's kind of I won't say it's too realistic, but it's also not too far fetched. And so I think it's just good to have like stories like this where you're showing, in a comic book format, like the far end of what one ideology could bring, because that's what comic books are good for, is to create these kind of worlds that don't really exist but is a reflection of a world, right? So I think this is like a reflection of taking something really extreme. And it's getting a lot of press, so I know it's becoming something that people are specking on. So, but that's it for me. For this mail day, not a huge mail day. I have, again, more books coming in on Sandman, but I do have a huge card I'm working on in a trade, and I have a huge comic book that I've been working on as well. So hopefully they come in. The next video I'll have some more cooler stuff to show off. I mean, it kind of ebbs and flows, as you collect. You don't always, again, get opportunity to get cool stuff every week, but I do have two things coming in that are going to be really nice, and one of them actually is a collection ender. So I've started a new collection with Death, but I'm actually ending one collection with this purchase, and I'm going to feel really good about it, and I hope to share with you, and I'll give you sort of like a recap of that whole collection, and you can see it in its entirety for the first time ever, and it'll be awesome for me to be able to shut the door. So so that's the update, and I'll keep you guys updated when those come in, and I'll see you next time. Bye.